that one struck a chord with me more than others because we were in a locale, at least it was brought out to us that because of the U.S., I mean, close proximity, with it didn't seem as remote as some of these other things were. It seemed real because it was brought out that we were just as susceptible to getting damaged by that as any place else in the U.S. Whereas, like with the racial thing, like I said, that went on down south. And the presidential thing, that kind of was so far up beyond what my thinking as a little mother and housewife was that it didn't really penetrate. But then the Cuban Missile Crisis scared me. 'Cause by then my kids were growing up and I was worried about what would happen with them and all that kind of stuff.
So you would say it would kind of shattered that feeling of immortality that Americans had, that the world would occur around them and they would never be affected?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that was for me personally, that was exactly, you hit it on the head.
So was it the threat of war or like actual nuclear crisis that was the most frightening?
I think it was the nuclear thing that was most frightening. It affected us like 911 affected, the generation during that time, which would be you and then, but I mean, a little older than you more so because you were so young at that time. But I mean, it was traumatic. It's something that everybody sat up and took notice, even though it happened on the East Coast.
Did you ever see like the duck and cover videos about what to do in case of a nuclear crisis?
We did, yeah. And the kids were instructed about, getting under their desks and all kinds of stuff like that.
And was there like a nearby bomb shelter of any sort?
No, we didn't ever have any designated place that, I mean, not just we, but I mean, in my community, that wasn't really talked about because I guess if it had gone on to escalate more, then that might have been a factor, but it didn't get to that. They were more concerned with the children when they were in school and handling them.
Or was everybody in the north or this part of this country worried about a direct strike or more about a strike to the East Coast or closer to Cuba?
Just the fact, I think what we worried about, what we were told at that time to be careful of, was that it might not just stay Cuba. It could spread to other countries that didn't like the U.S. and become an all-out mass war. That's what we were really worried about.
And was it so much anti-America countries or communist countries that were associated with?
Anti-American. They would look for any reason to come after us.
So it wasn't just communism?
No, and it wasn't just that they were on Cuba's side. It's kind of like if you saw a fracas going on out there and you say, well, I don't really like that kid they're beating up on either, so I think I'll jump in there and give him a couple of punches too. It would be that kind of a mentality that they didn't. And it's kind of like that. Like I said, it goes back to the same thing we're seeing now. A lot of these people that come in for these marches and like we just had on May Day where they break all the windows in Seattle and stuff, they don't have a direct reason to tell you. There isn't any one thing. I watched a news reporter. He asked 6 different people what their cause was, and they all had a different cause why they were down there causing problems and
There wasn't a unified flag that they were flying?
No, and that's where people will just take an opportunity when they see somebody, causing, they just like to get in on it.
And that's what you were afraid of, that all the other countries would
Yes.
take out their anger on America?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was. Sometimes you don't know who the enemy is and where they're coming from.
What was the scariest moment during this time? Was it when they say that one ship was coming towards that quarantine line and
I don't think that for me there was any one incident. It was just the thought of what could take place.
mm-hmm.
But as long as you could see that we were able to counter it, then people were, were getting more confident in our ability to defend ourselves. Then that helped you feel better.
Like anti-missile aircraft kind of stuff?
Those kinds of things, yeah. And I think there's a lot of people talk about secrecy in government, but I believe that a certain amount of it is necessary. Because we found at that time even that we had, like you say, these kinds of missiles and things that we citizens of this country weren't really aware of.
Mm-hmm.
We had no reason to be. It wasn't like they were hiding them. It's just that sometimes you don't want to play all your cards and let the whole world know where you stand, because then they'll have defenses for it. So yeah, I think when we got confident was when we could see that we had some things that we could fight back with.
Mm-hmm. So did you ever, I think Kennedy gave an address during the Cuban Missile Crisis about any attack against...
Well, our government just kept assuring us, that they were watching and that they were on top of things. And the other thing we had to keep in mind was Cuba is a very, very small country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a big part of it, too. The fear wasn't of Cuba. They were so small, we really could handle Cuba. The fear was if they got allies with them coming at us from all angles.
Like the Soviet Union was allied with
Yes,
them?
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So it wasn't Cuba that had the guns that everyone was afraid of?
Not really, because they're very small and they're not well organized from what you read.
Mm-hmm.
They are fairly poor. Yeah, I think it wasn't them. It was that they were like what I call the fire starter.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd strike the match and start the fire, and then people'd start throwing stuff on top. That was what we were worried about, but it soon was proved that wasn't going to happen, so that was good.
But at the time it was terrifying?
Yes. Yeah, at first it was.
Okay.
Because you don't know what more until like I said, until more, things came out and it was pointed out. They're in this alone. They're a small country. They don't have all the guns and ammunition and stuff that they would need to have a sustained, fight against what we had. They didn't have the planes. There's a lot of things but at first it startles you. You have to put it in perspective.
Because for the first time, really, the America homeland is in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be terrifying. Well, it is kind of like 9/11.
Exactly. Yeah, see, and we didn't have anything like that again until 9/11, and to think that they could do what they did and take us unaware like that was really a shocker.
Mm-hmm. Because you're not untouchable anymore.
Right.
All right.